In February 2026, government initiated a comprehensive reset of Ghana cocoa sector to restore financial viability, rebuild confidence among cocoa farmers, and reposition cocoa as a disciplined commercial institution capable of sustaining national output and value addition. The need for reform arises from the cumulative impact of misalignment in pricing, excessive debt accumulation, operational inefficiencies, and structural weaknesses that intensified between 2017 and 2024 and culminated in severe financial strain for COCOBOD. By January 2025, COCOBOD indebtedness has reached approximately 32.9 billion Ghana cedis. Ladies and gentlemen, the sector also entered 2025 amid unprecedented global cocoa price collapse of roughly 76% between January 2025 and February 2026. The magnitude has never been seen in the last 3 decades of our life. These domestic and international shocks jointly necessitated structural reforms to COCOBOD. There have been talk about forward sales and why forward sales may be the reason for where we are today. At the start of 2025 to 2026 cocoa season, COCOBOD had forward sold approximately 530,000 tons, representing about 82% of the projected 650,000 tons of cocoa at an achieved average FOB price near 7,200 per ton. Only 18% to 20% of the projected sales remained unexposed to the spot sales that we were trying to manage with the forward sales. By contrast, the 2023-2024 season illustrated the risk of excessive forward commitments. 672,000 metric tons were contracted against an estimated 850,000 tons of projected output. So even though we're expecting to grow and harvest about 850,000, we have gone ahead to sell over 786,000 to unsuspecting buyers who didn't know that we don't have the cocoa. Actual production was only 448,000. But we have signed a contract to sell almost 786,000. So we defaulted on those arrangements. And when you default on your forward sales agreements, there are implications, financial implications for the country. So ladies and gentlemen, this overcommitment created costly rollovers that continue to burden COCOBOD between 2025 and where we are now. So even though we had contracted to supply a lot more cocoa, we got only around 50% of what we contracted. So this government had to take over that additional overload with the financial implication for COCOBOD when monies were not made available to finance those purchases. COCOBOD entered 2025 with roughly 17.8 billion in loans plus significant operational liabilities. So loans alone was about 17.8 billion by the beginning of 2025. And if you add this to other obligations, you will soon come to realize that at this point, COCOBOD was bleeding with an exposure of over 60 billion Ghana cedis. Certainly, that vehicle could not be sustainable and needed to be addressed. I just want to tell you something simple. You know, what is the name? If you have a basket in which you put water to drink and the bucket is leaking, do you fit the leak before you put water inside, or you continue to put the water inside hoping that some will be left for you to drink? Ehinana edikosuo nabo. Obeso ano ansan wasa nsuo eguma na obese nsuo egum no wadwen se nyame beboa na nsuo na kem. You have 60 billion of somebody's money. It's not free money. You are not paying. And you are saying that we should continue to even go and borrow more. You know, maybe you don't listen to our people. These are people, even the common Bible, they read it in reverse. Could do 1 now, over 22 years. And these are the people advising us to go and add more debt when we cannot even pay 60 billion. And because we have kept quiet, somehow they think that these illogical arguments that they are advancing is what will save the people of Ghana. We are resetting the cocoa sector. And I will make you understand where we are by the close of this engagement. Ladies and gentlemen, COCOBOD, I just want to take you through a couple of the reckless financial exposures that these people left for us. They borrowed 1.8 billion from Africa Development Bank. This government, in 1 year, will have paid down 1.2 billion of that money. The interest that have accrued on those Africa Development Bank loans is about 209.5 million. We have paid 165 million of that money. They had a 10-year Bank of Ghana loan, the principal of which was 1.3 billion when they left. We have since paid that money by converting it into equity to recapitalize COCOBOD so that COCOBOD is financially strong and relieve them of the burden of servicing those debts. The interest payment on that is about 65.7 million. Again, we have relieved COCOBOD of this obligation by using it to recapitalize COCOBOD and give COCOBOD a better financial standing. The Ministry of Finance, that cocoa that they went and promised the people and took, you know why they were promising people that they can generate 850 metric tons? Because when they went to the market for the syndicated loan, they had to indicate that they are going to get receivables from 850,000 metric tons, so that the white man will be nodding and be giving the money. When they give them the money, they defaulted in paying all the money and had to go to the Ministry of Finance to borrow $70 million in bridge finance. Records show that the then Minister for Finance, Mohamed Amin Adam, had written couples of letters to remind them to make good that obligation. They failed. So even the money that they took, they couldn't pay all. They had to go and borrow to pay what they borrowed. The government of Ghana, in the wisdom of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the amount equivalent to about 1 million has been, 1 billion has been converted to equity to improve the financial standing of COCOBOD. That is the resetting that we are doing. Again, cocoa bonds totaling about 9.3 billion, they didn't pay. We have had to pay about 2 billion of that in this short period. Non-marketable bills from the Ministry of Finance that they didn't pay, 3.7 billion. The whole of that money has been converted to equity to improve the financial standing of COCOBOD. Other debts related to operations. Sometimes we take money, COCOBOD takes money from local processors. There are companies in Ghana that process cocoa. So sometimes they pay COCOBOD in advance to supply the cocoa. We took the money and didn't supply the cocoa. the government of Ghana have had to pay 741 million in John Mahama's term out of about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. Evacuation and other operational bills of about 168 million, we have paid 36 million of that money. Secondary evacuation of cocoa. So you can see that the restructuring of COCOBOD started long before the Minister for Finance announced the reforms, because we knew that COCOBOD, where it is, needed to be revitalized, needed to be recapitalized, and needed to go through a stringent financial restructuring, which we are already pursuing to put COCOBOD in good standing. Cocoa roads expenses. We inherited cocoa road commitments totaling about 26.5 billion Ghana cedis. Out of that money, we have done a review of the arrears and the expenditures involved, and 4.4 billion of that has been certified and rationalized and transferred to the Ministry of Roads to implement and conclude those transactions. We believe that the work of COCOBOD is not to be constructing roads. Since they themselves are now struggling, it is time for us to wash their hands off cocoa roads and get the appropriate Ministry of Roads and Highways to take over the construction of those roads. I would attach to you a list of those cocoa projects. In fact, it will surprise you to know that in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, COCOBOD made no allocation to construct roads. Yet, the government and COCOBOD defied the orders of its board, which did not agree that they should construct roads. They ended up awarding roads to the tune of 1.4 billion in 2017, 14 billion in 2018-19, and then a further 5.8 billion even in the year of COVID. In the year of COVID, when they were roaming around with bowl in hand, they were still milking COCOBOD to construct roads. But the worst of it is that COCOBOD, in its own wisdom, did not approve allocation for the construction of roads. But they bulldozed their way and had those huge sums of money to award contracts. The end result is that we were now settled with about 26.6 billion in road commitment at COCOBOD. Certainly this cannot continue. It must stop at some point. The monies that they drew down from Africa Development Bank loan of 600 million, 250 million of it was not released by Africa Development Bank. But the 350 million that they took for pollination and the rest with a view to improving cocoa production rather resulted in a drop in cocoa production. So where did the money go? Clearly, they were in cocoa. They use pollination and the rest just to take money. Irrigation and all those things that will make Ghanaians believe that they are working. The money didn't go there. As a result of the cocoa production rather plummeted after they spent those monies. Ladies and gentlemen, the matter before the people of Ghana is to whether to continue the business as usual and collapse COCOBOD Kojoto like we collapse the bond market. You have forgotten DDP, right? It was the same thing they were doing. They only know how to borrow. In fact, in this country, we were told that they were better borrowers. They knew how to borrow. Not better construction or contractors of road. Not people who developed better education, but that they were better at borrowing. Unfortunately, They were better at borrowing, but not better at paying the loans. So in the end, they went to the world and said that we cannot pay. Because we cannot pay, we all have to take a haircut. And then on top of that, the capital market that they came to meet, they went there to give them a haircut too. And now they are saying that the capital market that they've sacked, they declared Ghana bankrupt. And they're asking us to go and borrow. From where? In the international capital market, when you are passing and you mention the name of Ghana, everybody covers his money. Oh, you're not aware? Well, I don't know. Do you understand? So we, as descendants of Ghana who have inherited a country that is known not to pay debt. So where are they asking us to go and borrow from? Can they lead us to where we left them that they could borrow and went and destroyed, so that we'll go back to them and borrow? Now, they will not give us money because you have collapsed the capital market. And nobody is willing to give us money. So even if we wanted to borrow, where? Must have do have money to give us. Or you are not involved in DDP. Pensioners, I saw some of them the other day, they were demonstrating at the ministry. So that is the situation that we find ourselves. Over procurement. While the board was saddled with a lot of debt and serious financial challenges, COCOBOD continued to procure items as though it was Father Christmas. When COCOBOD had 286,000 bales of jute sacks sitting at the port, they only went and cleared 91,000 of them and left the rest at the port. Meanwhile, they also had 75,000 bales of jute sacks. So add that to what is in the port. They had enough to last them another 3-4 years. But just a few days before they left office, they went and contracted and paid 48 million to bring in 80,000 bales of jute sacks. These are reckless people. If it was possible in the days that we were shipping people, these are people that we have to line up and tell cocoa farmers, it is the conduct of these people that denied the government of Ghana the resources to properly take care of you at this point in time. So that we'll give everybody a cane. Cocoa farmers will ship you in tow. Then we will know who is at fault. But these are the type of people, because they can sing and dance more than everybody. Sometimes they tend to think that when they tell the same lie many times, it becomes the truth. If Ghanaians were not vigilant, I'm sure one day they would have told us that Psalm 23 has 118 verses. And that when you get to you get to 118, you don't proceed to 120. You rather come back to 20. Or is it 20, 22? But you people are very vigilant. You won't go and quote the Quran. You go and enter space anyway. Look, COCOBOD costs, as we speak now. COCOBOD requires no less than 23 million Ghana cedis to finance its ongoing operations. But on top of that, we also know that that's in millions. As we speak now, COCOBOD, in order for COCOBOD to survive, we are looking at being able to raise working capital of over 30 billion Ghana cedis. That 30 billion is not to pay the 60 billion they've left. It is just to make sure that COCOBOD can do lala sulala. 30 billion. So you can now understand. 30 billion. COCOBOD doesn't deal with millions. 30 billion in working capital. Meanwhile, if you look at the accounts of COCOBOD, you will notice that there's a big hole sitting there that needs to be addressed. liquidity of COCOBOD is over 2 billion. In other words, J3